Somewhere in Melbourne right now, a computer is playing a video game. Nobody is at the controls. Look closer. The player is inside the box. 800,000 living human neurons, grown from someone's skin, wired straight into the game. And here is the part that should stop you. You can buy this machine. $35,000, about the price of a new Tesla Model 3. If that is too much, rent one for $300 a week, like any cloud server. It is not a prototype in a locked lab. It is a product. The computer is alive, and it is for sale. Sit with what this machine actually is. Its chips do not calculate. They fire. Like the tissue behind your eyes is firing now. It does not draw megawatts. A full rack sips less power than a hairdryer. It does not get programmed. It gets trained, reward and feedback, like something that wants. And it was not built by a trillion-dollar giant. It came from a startup in Melbourne, most of the tech press could not name 2 years ago. But the strangest part is why the AI industry suddenly cares. The answer is a bill it cannot pay. This is the story of the first commercial computer made from living human cells. The dish of neurons that learned a video game in 5 minutes. The two companies already renting brain tissue by the month. And the number, 20 watts. That explains why Silicon's days as the only game in town may be numbered. To understand how brain cells became a product, start in Melbourne, Australia, 5,000 miles from Silicon Valley, in a city with no chip industry at all, with a doctor who left medicine, which, in hindsight, was exactly the point. The next computer was not going to come from people who think in transistors. It came from someone who thinks in cells. Han Weng-Chong trained as a physician. He walked away from medicine and, in 2019, founded a company on a claim that sounded like science fiction, with a business plan stapled to it: computers built on living neurons. The company was Cortical Labs. For its first years, almost nobody paid attention. Investors passed. Growing nerve cells in a dish was old science. Labs had done it for decades. The cells would fire. They would form connections, and then they would just sit there, biologically alive and computationally useless. The hard part, the part everyone doubted, was getting a dish of tissue to actually do something, to take input, to change, to learn. But the doubt died in 2022. In an experiment led by the company's chief scientist, Brett Kagan, his team grew roughly 800,000 human neurons across a bed of electrodes, a system they called DishBrain, and wired it into the world's simplest video game, Pong. The electrodes could whisper to the cells and listen back. The game state flowed in as patterns of electrical pulses, the ball's position, written in a language of place and timing. The cell's own firing moved the paddle. When the paddle missed, the cells received chaotic, unpredictable noise, the neural equivalent of static. When the paddle hit, they received clean, predictable feedback. That was the whole trick. No code, no reward chemicals, no instructions, just a preference, buried deep in how neurons work, for a world they can predict over a world they cannot. Given the choice, the tissue organized itself toward order, toward playing better, toward winning. The neurons learned to play in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Read that again, because it is the sentence this whole industry is built on, not 18 months of training on a server farm. 5 minutes, in a dish, on cells grown from human skin. The result was published in Neuron, one of the most respected journals in neuroscience, peer-reviewed, reported around the world, and impossible to dismiss as hype from a pitch deck. The clip of that dish playing Pong went everywhere. The obvious joke, "A petri dish is better at video games than your uncle," hid the serious point. A blob of tissue with no eyes, no body, and no brain structure had just done something Silicon still struggles with. It learned from almost nothing, almost instantly, using almost no power. Nobody wrote a program. The cells simply preferred a predictable world and taught themselves to make one. But a viral dish is not a business. The next move was the one nobody expected: turn it into a product you can order. In 2025, Cortical Labs unveiled the machine. In 2026, it started shipping. It is called the CL1. From the outside, it looks like a sleek white desktop box. Inside is the strangest supply chain in computing. The neurons begin as ordinary adult human cells, skin or blood, from donors. Those cells are reprogrammed into stem cells. The stem cells are grown into brain cells. The brain cells are settled onto an electrode array where they wire themselves together. No two units identical, because no two cultures grow the same. The company even ships its own operating system to talk to the tissue. Code on one side, cells on the other. And the box is not just a computer. It is a life support machine. Pumps, gases, temperature control, filtration. A tiny intensive care unit keeping the processor alive. Note that word, alive, which means the spec sheet includes something no computer has ever had, a lifespan, about 6 months. Then the culture declines and the processor, there is no other way to say this, dies. FinalSpark's smaller organoids last around 100 days, the first computers in history that wear out the way we do. The price list reads like normal tech, which is exactly what makes it surreal. $35,000 a unit, around $20,000 each if you buy them by the rack. And for everyone else, wetware as a service, $300 a week buys you remote access to living human neurons from your laptop. The company's own spec sheet says a full server rack of them draws under 1,000 watts, less than a household space heater, while a silicon rack doing serious AI work can draw 100 times more. Picture actually using one, because you can. You open a browser, you log into a dashboard, you upload your experiment. Somewhere in Melbourne, electrical pulses you designed run through living human tissue, and the tissue answers you, its responses streaming back to your screen like any API. You never see the cells, you never sign for the biohazard. $300 a week, build like software. The most radical machine of the decade, wearing the boring costume of a cloud subscription. But Cortical Labs is not alone, which is how you know this is a field and not a stunt. In Switzerland, a company called FinalSpark runs the Neuro platform. 16 miniature brain organoids, each around 10,000 neurons, rentable by researchers for $500 a month. 34 universities have asked for access. Only 9 have been let in. The rest are in line, waiting for organoids to be grown. A supply chain you cannot rush, because the parts have to live. When demand outruns supply 9 to 34, you are not looking at a curiosity. You are looking at a market being born, with waiting lists, price tiers, and a supply chain measured in petri dishes. 2 companies, 2 continents, 2 business models. Buy the box outright in Australia, or rent the tissue by the month in Switzerland. The season 1 of an industry. But that raises the real question. Why would anyone want a computer made of meat in the first place? The answer is the biggest problem in modern technology. Here is the wall the AI industry has been quietly hitting in every story we have told on this channel. The machines that make AI chips are rationed. Fewer than 50 a year, from one Dutch company. The compute those chips produce is so scarce and expensive that AI companies lose billions serving it. $1.35 spent for every dollar earned, subsidized by investors. And underneath both problems sits the rawest one, electricity. Data centers now negotiate for power like small nations. New builds get delayed, not for lack of chips, but for lack of grid. Training a single large model consumes energy measured in gigawatt-hours. FinalSpark cites around 10 gigawatt-hours for a GPT-3 class model, thousands of times what a person uses in a year. Every road in the AI century leads to the same toll booth, watts. The grid, the chips, and the money are all straining under one load. Now put a human brain on the scale, 20 watts. The thing reading this sentence through your eyes runs on 20 watts, a dim light bulb, and it outlearns every data center on Earth at tasks it has never seen. A supercomputer chasing a fraction of that flexibility draws around 10 megawatts. 10 million watts against 20. That is a gap of roughly 1,000,000 times. And it is not an engineering failure. It is a design difference. Silicon moves electrons through dead sand and pays full price for every switch, every time. Biology spent hundreds of millions of years being punished for waste. Every organism that squandered energy got outcompeted by one that did not. Your brain is what survived. It is the most energy-audited machine in the known universe. That gap is the entire bet. FinalSpark claims its organoid platform runs on the order of 1,000,000 times less energy than digital processors for what it does, a company claim. But one pointed at a truth nobody disputes. If even a sliver of AI's workload could run on living tissue, the economics of the entire industry would bend. The subsidy problem from our last story exists because inference burns electricity. The chip bottleneck matters because silicon is the only substrate we have. Neurons attack both assumptions at once. And before this feels abstract, find yourself in it. Your AI subscription is subsidized because inference burns electricity. Your GPU costs what it costs because the chips are rationed. Your power bill is drifting up in regions where data centers moved in next door. You are already paying for silicon's inefficiency 3 different ways. You just never see the meter. A substrate that computes for watts instead of megawatts is not a laboratory curiosity. It is the first credible attack on the bill you are quietly splitting with the entire internet. This is why the money is quietly moving, not because a dish plays Pong, because the AI century has an energy bill it cannot keep paying. And evolution already solved the efficiency problem the entire semiconductor industry is stuck on. The question stopped being whether biological computing is impressive. It is whether it can scale before the grid buckles. Now the correction, because this is where every viral video oversells. These machines are not about to replace your GPU. They cannot run a spreadsheet. They cannot render a game. They cannot train a chatbot. Today, they are research instruments. For drug testing, for studying how learning works, for exploring a different kind of computation entirely. For scale, the showpiece demo is modest. Units have been reported running Doom, a game from 1993 that any phone handles without noticing. That is the honest state of the art. Impressive because it is tissue, not because it is fast. Here is what the paying customers actually do with living processors. Drug companies watch how real human neurons respond to compounds. A test no mouse and no simulation can honestly replace. Neuroscientists study learning at the cellular level, in fast forward, with full control of every input. And a growing group of AI researchers study the things silicon cannot give them. How nature builds intelligence that learns instantly and runs on almost nothing. The dish is not competing with the data center. It is teaching the people who build data centers what they have been doing wrong. The scientists at the center of this field said so themselves. In late 2025, Biocomputing's own pioneers publicly warned that inflated claims could poison the field before it matures. The honest pitch is not silicon is dead. The honest pitch is stranger. For the first time, computation grown from human tissue is reliable enough to sell. That is the kind of story this channel exists for. The machines that quietly run your life, and what they actually cost once you read the spec sheet. If that is your kind of story, hit like and subscribe. And there is one more thing almost nobody in the excited coverage talks about. The processor in this machine is human, and that sentence has consequences. Every CL1 processor started as a person's skin cells. Someone donated tissue, likely for medical research, and that tissue is now a commercial product learning video games in a box for paying customers. Which raises a question the industry has not answered. What exactly did the donor consent to? The consent forms of a decade ago never imagined your cells may be reprogrammed into neurons and rented out at $300 a week. Think about your own signature for a second. If you have ever donated blood or tissue for research, you signed a form. Somewhere in its paragraphs was a phrase like, future research uses. Nobody who signed that in 2015 was consenting to their cells becoming a rented processor playing Doom for a customer in another hemisphere. The law has not caught up. The forms have not caught up. The cells are already shipping. And that is the shallow end of the pool. In 2025, researchers at Johns Hopkins showed that lab-grown brain organoids display the basic building blocks of learning and memory. The same mechanisms your neurons are using right now. Nobody serious claims these systems are conscious. The tissue is tiny, unstructured, and has no senses, no pain pathways as we understand them, no self. But the direction of travel is the whole point. Every generation of this technology gets larger, more structured, and better at learning. The field's own scientists have drawn up governance frameworks. An entire discipline called organoid intelligence now carries an ethics charter, the Baltimore Declaration, and at least one leading lab keeps a professional ethicist inside every research meeting. Not to slow the work, but to catch the moment things change. Notice what kind of problem this is. It is not science fiction dread. It is a liability question, an insurance question, a regulation question. The kind of question that decides whether an industry gets to exist. The companies know it. Watch their language. The machines are marketed carefully as instruments. The neurons are cultures. The learning is adaptation. The death of a culture is end of life cycle. Never a mind, never a being. The vocabulary is a firewall, and it is load-bearing. The moment a court, a regulator, or a public consensus decides otherwise, this industry changes shape overnight. And the field's pioneers went public in late 2025 precisely to keep the hype from writing checks the science cannot cash. Because one overclaim, one "we built a conscious computer" headline, could bring the regulatory ceiling down on all of it. And hanging over all of it is the strangest maintenance schedule in technology. Every CL1 culture dies within months and gets replaced. Every FinalSpark organoid lasts about 100 days. The industry calls this a consumable, like printer ink, like server parts, made of human neurons. Somewhere between those two sentences is the entire ethical puzzle of the next decade. Somewhere in that same decade, a version of this machine will be capable enough that switching it off feels different from switching off a laptop. The industry's future depends on knowing exactly where that line is before crossing it. For 70 years, computing's hardest problems were physics. This machine's hardest problem is philosophy, with a price list. So walk back through what you now know. You know a dish of 800,000 human neurons learned Pong in 5 minutes, and the result survived peer review. You know the machine, built on that science, is for sale. $35,000, or $300 a week, with a rival renting brain organoids for $500 a month to a queue of waiting universities. You know why the industry cares. 20 watts against 10 million, the one efficiency gap silicon can never close. And you know the unsolved question, riding inside every unit, cells from a person, computing for a paycheck, under consent forms, written for a different century. You will probably never buy one. No CL1 will sit on your desk, and no organoid will answer your emails. But the machines you already pay for, the chips, the data centers, the subsidized subscriptions, are all straining against the same energy wall, and the industry knows it. Biology is not the backup plan, it is the escape route. Because for 70 years, we built machines that compute. This decade, quietly, with a price list, we started growing them. If this changed what you think a computer is, hit like and subscribe. The machines run deeper than silicon now, and this channel takes them apart one at a time. Now the comments, and think before you answer. A computer made from human cells, a brilliant tool, or a line we should not cross? Would you run your AI on one?